A boot kicked open a screen door. Then came a scream from inside the small house. A woman's voice, old and frail, choked off mid-word. Then dead silence. The dog moved first. 80 pounds of German Shepherd cleared the porch in 2 bounds and vanished into the dark hallway. The man followed. Leather vest. Gray beard. A patch on his back that folks in this town crossed the street to avoid. He stopped in the kitchen doorway. He stopped because of what he saw on the floor. A cast iron frying pan. A broken kitchen chair. A single white slipper, soaked through with something dark and wet. His name was Buck Holloway. 41 years riding with the Hells Angels. He had buried friends. He had broken bones. But what waited for him in the back bedroom would test every promise he ever made to his dying father. Stay with me. To understand what Buck Holloway found that afternoon, you have to go back a few weeks. And you have to know a few things about him. Buck was 64 years old. He had a face that looked like it had been carved out of weathered oak. His beard was long and gray and tied at the bottom with a small leather cord. He stood 6'4". He weighed close to 240 pounds. And he had been riding with the same Hells Angels chapter since he was 23 years old. But there was something else about Buck that most folks did not know. Every Sunday for 40 years, he rode out to a little house at the end of Sycamore Lane to have lunch with his mother. Her name was Ruth. She was 84 years old. She stood barely 5 feet tall in her stocking feet. She made the best chicken and dumplings in 3 counties. And she was the only person in the world who could tell Buck Holloway what to do. He showed up every Sunday in the same leather vest. She made him take it off at the door. He sat at her kitchen table with his hands folded like a schoolboy. She poured him sweet tea in a tall glass with ice. And for 2 hours every week, the man with the rough patch on his back became just a son visiting his mother. The dog came along too. His name was Kaiser. 80 pounds of black and tan German Shepherd. Buck had raised him from a pup. Kaiser was trained for protection, for tracking, for the kind of work most folks would never want to know about. But around Ruth, Kaiser lay flat on his belly under the kitchen table and waited for scraps. She fed him bites of chicken like he was a house cat. That was the Sunday routine. For 40 years. Now here is where things started to go wrong. About 3 weeks before that afternoon, Ruth mentioned something over lunch. She said a nice young man had started coming by. He worked for Senior Services, she said. He was helping her carry her groceries from the car. He had even fixed the gutter on the side of the house. Buck stopped chewing. He asked her what the man's name was. She said his name was Vince. Vince Marlowe. Buck asked her how she met him. She said he had knocked on her door one afternoon and said her name had come up on a list of seniors in the area who might need help. He had a clipboard. He had a name badge. He had a clean haircut and a polite smile. Buck did not say anything for a long minute. Then he asked her if she had given this man any money, or signed anything, or let him into her bedroom. Ruth said no, of course not. She wasn't born yesterday. But Buck knew his mother, and he knew that look on her face. The look that said she had grown to like the company. The look that said maybe she had let her guard down a little. Buck made a phone call that night. He called a brother from his chapter who had a son working in the sheriff's department. He asked him to run the name Vince Marlowe. The answer came back 2 days later. There was no Vince Marlowe registered with any senior services agency in the county. There was no Vince Marlowe in any state database that lined up with the description Buck had given. The man was a ghost, or he was using a fake name. Buck called his mother. He told her, in the gentlest voice he could manage, not to let that man in the house anymore. He told her if Vince came back, she should lock the door and call him immediately. Ruth said she would. Then she called him back 3 days later and said Vince had stopped by with 2 friends. She said they all seemed nice. She said she had given them coffee on the porch. But she had not let them in the house. Buck told her he was riding out the next morning. He told her not to open the door for anyone. That was a Wednesday. By Friday morning, Ruth was not answering her phone. Buck called 4 times. He let it ring 15 rings each time. On the 5th call, the line just rang and rang. He got on his bike. Kaiser climbed into the sidecar. The ride from his place to her house took 42 minutes. He covered it in 28. The screen door slammed shut behind him. The hallway smelled wrong. Not like Sunday. Sunday smelled like chicken and lemon polish on the wood floors. This smelled like sweat and metal and something else underneath that Buck did not want to name. Kaiser was already deep in the house. Buck could hear his nails clicking on the kitchen tile. Then a low growl. Then a sharp, single bark from the back bedroom. Buck moved through the kitchen. He saw the frying pan on the floor. Cast iron. The kind his mother had owned since 1962. The handle was bent. The chair was broken into pieces. One of the legs was missing. The white slipper was the worst part, because it was right side up, like it had fallen off her foot and stayed exactly where it landed when someone had picked her up and carried her somewhere. Buck did not run. He moved careful. His right hand drifted to his belt. He had a knife clipped there. He had not used it for anything but cutting rope in 20 years. But it was there. He reached the back bedroom doorway. Kaiser was standing over Ruth. She was on the floor in the corner between the bed and the closet. Her white hair was matted with blood on the left side of her head. Her glasses were broken next to her hand. She was tied to the leg of the bed with a brown extension cord. Her arms were bound behind her. Her ankles were tied together. But she was alive. She was breathing. Buck dropped to his knees beside her. Kaiser stepped back. The dog kept his eyes on the closet door across the room. Buck cut the cord with his knife in 2 strokes. He lifted his mother into his arms. She weighed less than he remembered. She was always small. But now she felt like something hollow. Like a bird. Her eyes opened. She tried to speak. Her lip was split. Her cheek was swollen so bad that one eye barely opened. But she saw him. She saw her son. She whispered something. He had to lean down to hear it. She said, "They took it, Buck. They took it." He asked her what they took. She said, "The ring. Your father's ring." And then she closed her eyes again. Buck carried her out of that house. He carried her through the kitchen. He stepped over the frying pan. He stepped over the broken chair. He set her down on the porch swing and he wrapped her in his vest. 41 years he had worn that vest. His angel's patch. His earned colors. He wrapped his mother in it like a blanket. He called 911. He told the operator to send everything they had. He gave them the address. He told them to send a deputy and an ambulance and to send them now. Kaiser sat on the porch beside Ruth. The dog did not move. The dog watched every direction at once. Buck walked back into the house alone. He went through every room. He went down into the cellar with his phone flashlight on. He came back up. Whoever had done this was gone. But they had left things behind. They had left a coffee cup on the kitchen counter. They had left a pack of cigarettes on the windowsill. They had left a clipboard on the dining room table. Buck picked up the clipboard with his fingers around the edges. He had been around enough cops in his life to know what fingerprints could do. The clipboard had a fake form on it. The form had the seal of an organization called Senior Outreach Services. The address listed was a P.O. box in another county. The phone number had a strange area code. The form was filled out in pencil. It had his mother's name, her birth date, her social security number, the name of her bank, and the account numbers from the last 3 statements she had received in the mail. Buck stared at that piece of paper for a long time. Then he heard the sirens. He walked back out to the porch. The deputy's car pulled into the driveway. The ambulance came right behind it. The paramedics got an 4 in her arm. They got oxygen on her face. They lifted her onto a stretcher. She was going to make it. They said so right there on the porch. She had a concussion. She had cracked ribs. She had cuts. But she was going to make it. The deputy came up beside Buck with a notepad. He was a young guy. He had a clean uniform. He had a steady voice. He asked Buck what had happened. Buck told him. He told him about Vince Marlowe, about the clipboard, about the friends who had stopped by on Wednesday, about the silence on the phone Friday morning. The deputy wrote it all down. He said this looked like an isolated incident. 3 guys running a scam. They got greedy. They got rough. They probably ran for the state line already. He told Buck to go to the hospital. He told Buck they would handle the rest. Buck nodded. He climbed into his pickup truck. Kaiser climbed in next to him. He drove behind the ambulance all the way into town. He sat in the waiting room while they took his mother into surgery. He drank bad coffee out of a paper cup. He held his head in his hands. He thought about the wedding ring. He thought about his dying father in 1991, lying in a hospital bed not unlike the one his mother was in right now. He thought about the promise he had made then. He had been 28 years old. He had been wild. He had been angry at the world. But he had promised his father he would take care of his mother for the rest of her life. And for 35 years he had kept that promise. He sat in the waiting room and he thought, "It's over. The worst is over. She will live. The police will find them or they won't. Either way she is safe now." He was wrong. The hospital door swung open. A different man walked into the waiting room. Older, tired eyes, gray suit, a badge clipped to his belt. He sat down in the chair next to Buck. He did not introduce himself for a long moment. He just sat there. Then he said, "Mr. Holloway, I'm Detective Pruitt, State Investigations. I need to talk to you about your mother." Buck looked up. The detective opened a folder on his lap. He spread out 3 photographs. The photographs were of 3 other elderly women. Different houses, different towns, same kind of injuries, same kind of scene. He said, "Your mother is the 7th in 9 months. Same county, same pattern. Always World War II widows. Always women who live alone. Always women whose husbands left them a paid-off house and a savings account." Buck did not move. The detective said, "2 of them did not make it." Buck stood up. His chair scraped backward across the hospital floor. Kaiser, who had been lying at his feet, came up on his haunches in a single fluid motion. The detective held up a hand. He said, "Sit down, please. There is more." Buck sat back down, but slow, like a man who was not sure he was going to stay there. The detective said this was not 3 guys. This was an operation. There was a man at the top. They did not have a name yet, but this man had been running senior scams up and down this part of the state for at least 2 years. He used different crews. He moved territory. He found the lonely ones. He sent in a man like Vince Marlowe to scout. Then he sent in the muscle to finish. The detective said the worst part was this. The man at the top did not just take money. He took deeds. He forged signatures. He sold the houses out from under the families before they even knew what had happened. By the time the family came around for the funeral, the house was gone. Sold to a shell company. Title clean. Money washed. The detective said your mother was supposed to be number 7. Last name on a list they recovered from a storage unit raid 2 weeks ago. The list had 6 names crossed off. Your mother's name was the 7th. It was not crossed off yet. Buck asked him what that meant. The detective said it meant they were not done. It meant the men who beat his mother were planning to come back. Tonight, tomorrow night, soon, to take the deed, to finish the job. Buck said, "Then catch them." The detective said, "We are trying, but they have been a step ahead of us for 2 years. They have inside help. We think they have someone in the county clerk's office. Every time we get close, they vanish." He said the FBI was being brought in. He said it would take weeks, maybe months. Buck said his mother did not have weeks. The detective said he understood. He said the best thing Buck could do right now was let them handle it. Buck did not say anything to that. The detective handed him a card. He stood up. He told Buck to call if he thought of anything else. He walked out of the waiting room. Buck looked at the card. Then he looked at Kaiser. Kaiser was already watching him. If you are still with me on this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button. I tell these kinds of stories every week, and the only way more folks find them is if you let the algorithm know you are listening. Now let's get back to it. Buck got up out of the chair. He walked out of the hospital. He walked into the parking lot. The sun was setting. He stood next to his pickup and he made a phone call. He called a man named Dutch. Dutch had been his sergeant at arms for 15 years. Dutch was 62 years old. Dutch had a face like a bulldog. Dutch had served 2 tours in Vietnam before the Angels ever found him. Buck told Dutch what had happened. Dutch was silent for a long time. Then Dutch said, "Tell me what you need." Buck told him. He needed eyes on every storage facility in 3 counties. He needed someone watching the county clerk's office at sunrise. He needed every brother who had ever owed him a favor to start calling in markers. He needed someone to find Vince Marlowe and follow him without being seen. Dutch said it would be done by morning. Buck hung up the phone. He climbed into his pickup. Kaiser hopped in next to him. He started the engine. He did not drive home. He drove to the clubhouse. The clubhouse was on the edge of town. A long cinder block building with a metal roof. 6 bikes parked out front when Buck pulled in. By midnight there were 30. By 2 in the morning there were close to 50. Brothers from 3 states had ridden in by dawn. Buck stood at the head of the table in the back room. The table was scarred wood. The room smelled of leather and gun oil and coffee. Kaiser sat at his feet. He told them everything. He laid out the photographs Pruitt had shown him. He laid out the names. The clipboard. The clean-cut man named Vince Marlowe. He said, "I am not asking you to do anything illegal. I am asking you to be my eyes. We find them. We watch them. We hand them over to the law. Clean. With evidence. So nothing slips through a courtroom on a technicality." The room was quiet. A man near the back said, "And if they come at her again before we find them?" Buck said, "She is under guard at the hospital. 2 brothers in the lobby. 2 more in the hallway. Nobody gets near her." A different brother said, "And if we find them first?" Buck said, "We hold them. We call Pruitt. We hand them over." The room muttered. Buck said, "I am not asking for vengeance. I am asking for justice. If we kill these men, the boss disappears. He starts again somewhere else. 3 more widows. 5 more widows. We end this whole operation or we end nothing at all." That settled it. The brothers split into teams. They took their assignments. They rolled out. By sunrise, Dutch called. Vince Marlowe had been spotted at a diner 30 miles east. He was eating breakfast with 2 other men. Dutch had a brother tailing them in a plane truck. By 9 in the morning, the 3 men were at a storage facility on the edge of a dying town called Belden. Unit 47. They went inside for 40 minutes. They came out with a duffel bag. By 10, Dutch had eyes on the unit. The men had driven into the woods to a hunting cabin 3 miles up a dirt road. Dutch had brothers watching every approach. Buck rode out at noon. He took 6 brothers with him. He took Kaiser in the sidecar. He told Pruitt over the phone that he was about to make a citizen's arrest. He told him the address. He told him to bring everyone he had. Pruitt asked him to wait. Buck said he could not wait. He said the men had a duffel bag. He said the duffel bag probably had paperwork in it. Deeds. Forged signatures. Once that paperwork left the cabin, it was gone forever. Pruitt said he was on his way. Buck rolled up to the cabin at 12:30 in the afternoon. There were no guns drawn. There did not need to be. 6 bikers fanned out around the cabin. 3 more on the dirt road behind them. Kaiser stood at Buck's side with his ears flat against his skull. Buck walked up to the front door. He knocked. A voice from inside called out something. A laugh, like he was expecting one of his own. The door opened. The man who opened it was Vince Marlowe, the clipboard man. Clean haircut, polo shirt, a coffee cup in his hand. He looked at Buck. He looked past Buck. He saw the bikers. He saw the dog. The coffee cup hit the floor. Buck did not say anything for a long second. Then he said, "Vince, we need to have a conversation." Vince turned to run. Kaiser hit him at the doorway. The dog took him to the floor with a single shoulder. He did not bite. He did not have to. Vince hit the ground face first. The wind came out of him in one long groan. Two other men came down the hallway with handguns drawn. A brother named Tripp stepped out from behind a tree and put a deer rifle on them through the kitchen window. Another brother on the other side did the same. The men froze. Buck said, "Set them on the floor." Now. They set them on the floor. Two brothers walked through the door, picked up the handguns, ejected the magazines, and tossed the pieces out into the dirt. Buck stepped over Vince. He walked into the cabin. The duffel bag was on the kitchen table. He opened it. It was full of paperwork. Folders, forged documents, signatures pages with notary stamps that did not match any real notary. A laptop, a burner phone, a small ledger book. The ledger book had numbers in it, dollar amounts, initials, addresses. Buck flipped through the pages. He stopped on the last entry. It had his mother's address. It had a dollar amount, $240,000. It had two letters, MB. Buck said, "Who is MB?" Vince did not answer. Buck repeated the question. Vince still did not answer. The brother named Tripp walked over. He took Vince by the back of his collar. He lifted him up off the floor. He held him there. Vince said, "Marlon Beck. Marlon Beck. Please. He runs everything. He is in the county. He has a horse farm off Route 9. Buck wrote the name down. He folded the paper. He put it in his pocket. Pruitt arrived 3 minutes later. 6 patrol cars came up the dirt road. They cuffed the 3 men. They took the duffel bag into evidence. They took the ledger. They took the laptop. Pruitt looked at Buck. He said, "You and me are going to have a long conversation later." Buck said, "Yes, sir, we are." Then he handed Pruitt the slip of paper. He said, "Marlon Beck, horse farm, Route 9. Pruitt did not say anything for a second. Then he turned and started barking orders into his radio. Marlon Beck was arrested at his horse farm 2 hours later. He tried to run. He did not get past the front gate. The state police had it surrounded before he even knew they were coming. When they searched the property, they found a barn that was not a barn. They found 3 filing cabinets full of forged deeds. They found a safe with cash from 6 states. They found a computer with the names of more than 80 victims that nobody had even started to count yet. Marlon Beck was charged with racketeering. He was charged with murder in the death of 2 of the women. He was charged with elder abuse. He was charged with forgery, with mail fraud, with witness tampering. The list ran 3 pages long. He took a plea deal eventually. 62 years. No parole. Vince Marlowe got 30 years. The other 2 got 25. The man at the county clerk's office who had been feeding them information turned himself in the morning after the arrests. He cried at his press conference. He said he had a gambling problem. Nobody felt sorry for him. He got 8 years. That all happened over the months that followed. But here is what mattered most. Ruth Holloway woke up on the 2nd day after the surgery. Buck was in the chair next to her bed. He had not left the hospital except to go to the cabin. He had slept in that chair for 3 nights. She opened her eyes. She saw her son. She tried to smile, but her lip was still split. She said one word. She said, "Kaiser." Buck laughed for the first time in 4 days. He said the dog was in the truck. He said the nurses would not let him in. She said to go get him. Buck went to the parking lot. He got Kaiser out of the truck. He walked the dog right past the nurse's station and down the hallway. The head nurse stood up. She opened her mouth. She saw Buck's face. She closed her mouth. She sat back down. Kaiser walked into the room. He saw Ruth in the bed. He sat down beside the bed and put his head right next to her hand. Ruth scratched him behind the ears. She said, "Good boy." That was when Buck pulled the chair up close to her bed and started to talk. He told her everything. About the men. About the list. About Vince. About Marlon Beck. About the horse farm. About the cabin in the woods. She listened. When he was done, she was quiet for a minute. Then she said, "I'm sorry." Buck said, "Mom." "For what?" She said, "I let him in the first time. I knew something was wrong with him. I was lonely. I wanted the company. I'm sorry." Buck took her hand. The hand that was not bandaged. He held it. He said, "Mom, I am the one who is sorry. I should have come sooner. I should have moved you into my place 10 years ago. None of this was your fault. None of it." She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Reach in the drawer." The bedside drawer. Buck slid it open. There was a small plastic bag with her belongings. The clothes she had been wearing. Her broken glasses. A wallet. A wedding band on a silver chain. He held up the chain. He said, "Where did you get this?" She said the detective had brought it by that morning. They had found it in Vince's pocket when they searched him at the cabin. Buck looked at the ring. His father's wedding band. The ring his father had worn for 51 years. The ring his mother had worn on a chain around her neck since the funeral. He put the chain over his mother's head. He laid the ring against her chest. He closed her hand over it. She closed her eyes. She slept. Buck sat with her until visiting hours ended, and then he sat with her for 2 more hours after that, because nobody at that hospital was about to tell him to leave. In the months that followed, Ruth healed. The cracked ribs took 6 weeks. The cuts faded. The bruises went from purple to yellow to nothing at all. She got a new pair of glasses with thicker frames. She started cooking again by springtime. She did not stay in the house on Sycamore Lane. Buck would not allow it. He built an addition on his own place. A small bedroom and a sitting room with big windows that looked out at his garden. He moved her in himself. Every morning he made her coffee. Every Sunday she made him chicken and dumplings. Kaiser still lay under the kitchen table waiting for scraps. Ruth lived another 7 years. She passed in her sleep at the age of 91. Buck was holding her hand when she went. They buried her next to her husband. The wedding band was on her finger. Buck made sure of it. After the funeral, he rode out to a quiet road by himself. Kaiser was getting old by then. The dog rode in the sidecar with a blanket. Buck rode slow. He pulled over at a spot where the road climbed up over a hill and you could see for miles. He sat on his bike and he looked out at the land. He thought about a promise made in a hospital room in 1991. He thought about his dying father. He thought about a 28-year-old kid in a leather vest who had no idea what that promise would actually cost him over 35 years. He thought about how he had paid it. He thought about the ring. He thought about the dumplings. He thought about the small woman in the stocking feet who had told him every Sunday to take off his vest at the door. He sat there until the sun went down. Kaiser slept beside him. The wind came up. Buck Holloway smiled. Then he started the bike. He turned around. He rode home.